Today I'm going to talk to you about so I want this to be more of like a collaborative session. I've got some things I'm going to show, but if at any point you have anything to comment on, question, correct me because I've said something stupid, please raise your hand and I'll try and notice when people are doing that. I'm going to start by going through some things that I use to speed up my coding productivity, and then at the end we'll have a bit of a session for you guys to all chip in, and I'll try and demo the ones that we have time for, or that I can do with my editor. This is mostly going to center around VSCode, because that seems to, based on my poll that was in the Slack at some point, be the most popular thing that people use at the moment, and for good reason. But these are, unless you're using something like Vim, pretty much compatible with other editors like Atom or Sublime, that sort of thing. All right, so I was going to get started with something else, but then I realized there was something I wanted to talk about first, which I can't really demo right now, but you know VS Code updates like all the time, and whenever you first update it, it comes up with that like updates and stuff. Read that. If you have time, read that. That is how you learn most of this stuff, because it tells you about all the great new features. All right, also, if at some point I keep flicking to this is my notes. Try not to read them, because I'll read them. But they are there. Right, so we were going to start off with the command palette, and this is like my go-to thing for how to figure out anything that I need to do in VS Code. Whether I've read about it or not, half of the time I'm like, oh, I really wish I could do this in the editor, and I open up the command palette and start typing in stuff, and I find out that it can already do that, so super useful. So, worth mentioning as well, if I say shortcuts, they might be shortcuts that are only relevant to me, because I think I've got the Atom key bindings on, and most people will probably not have that. Some of them will be compatible. Anyway, you can find out what the shortcuts for things are in the command palette. So on a Mac, for me at least, that is Command-Shift-P, opens up this little thing where you can type in stuff. So I can find out about, what's a good example? What's something people normally do or want to know how to do in VS Code? This is the, sorry?
Format apply.
Format, right, so yeah, I could search for, oh no, get out. Sorry, admit. I can type in format, and I've got a format document thing in there. And on the right-hand side over here, we've got the key bindings for that, which is Shift-Alt-B. I don't know why it's that for me. It's generally like Command-F or something more sensible. Shift-F, yeah. All right, but the point is everyone's going to have slightly different key bindings, but you can find them through this. As part of this, you'll notice that we've got a little chevron, that little arrow thing at the start. That is for when we're searching for commands and stuff, but if you delete that, we're going to the like file search, which for me is Command-P. So I can start searching for files, like I've got an index.tsx there, I could search for my package.json, etc. And a thing that I don't see a lot of people use is that, I don't know the shortcut for this because I generally just press Command-P and then type @ but you can search for symbols in the current file, and this even works with, in the example here, I've got a Markdown file open that has headers, and I can just really quickly skip through all of the different sections of my Markdown. But if you were in I've got a tiny little React project set up here. If I were to see what symbols are available, I've got a render function and just app component. That's probably not the best example, but you know, it gets more complex. This is not that much different actually than, if I'm talking too fast at any point, please slow me down, or make like a bad buzzer sound like, eh. Yeah. At the top of your file, you should have these little dots things, and here you can actually explore the symbols as well, so you get like a more visual sort of tree view of it. All right, so that was command palette and stuff. Settings that you should enable. Let's use the command palette to find the settings. It's worth noting that you can open the settings in two different ways. You see here at the top, we've got open the settings UI, which is probably what most people are used to using. But I tend to just open the settings like JSON file. They're stored in a JSON file, so you can go and edit them manually. But for the sake of this demo, let's use the UI, because it has a nice search feature. So settings I would recommend are, maybe it doesn't have a space in it, trimming trailing white space, trimming trailing new lines, and insert new lines. I should just, I should mention, I'm going to open source this little project demo at some point, and I'll stick the link in the Slack so that you guys can have a look at my notes and play around with stuff yourself. These three are they're not going to help you speed up your code at all, except that you will find yourself not trying to delete all of the stuff that is after you wrote, or if you copied and pasted something from Stack Overflow that has a bunch of nonsense in it. Trim trailing white space removes white space at the end of your lines. Trim trailing new lines removes a bunch of new lines that are at the end of your file. And add final new line is something that you will only realize you need when something doesn't work and you don't know why. And I'm still not really sure of the explanation for this, but some programs don't read the final line of your file unless it's followed by a new line. So and a lot of formatting tools will automatically do this for you, but yeah, good thing to have. As part of that, common settings across all editors, these sort of things, how much indentation you use and that can be stored in an editor config file. And editor config is like kind of standard across all the editors, and VS Code has an extension for it. So if I search for editor config, which I can't spell, is it just one word? Oh, there it is. All right. So this is basically a little place to store settings that you can use, and all of your colleagues or whoever you're working with can use. That's why it's good for collaboration. You can set all the sort of standards that you use across all of your code in advance, and it's not language specific, but it can also be language specific. Anyway, it's a very flexible tool that will just automatically configure VS Code for you each time you add this file to your home directory or a specific project or wherever. Right, auto format on edit and paste and save. These are pretty useful. I actually don't use any of them anymore because I find they get annoying at times, especially if you've got something formatting while you're typing and your code isn't semantically correct, it's going to do some weird stuff. Similarly, if you paste half of a block of code and it tries to format it, it freaks out. So I generally have format on save, if anything, but again, you could manually format with whatever mine was, Control Option B for some reason. Bracket pair colorization, I think is something that comes with VS Code out of the box now. You don't have to enable it yourself, but you'll see that if we start adding some brackets of any kind, they end up in different colors at different levels, so it makes it a lot easier to follow where your brackets open and close. Cool. That was a nice simple one to demo. Editor label format is one that I don't see a lot of people realize is an option, and that is the labels of your tabs along the top. By default, it only shows the file name, and when I'm working with other people and I start naming a bunch of files, index.tsx or index.ts, they're like, Jake, can you stop naming everything the same thing? I don't know what I'm looking at. But if you change the format to medium or long, then you'll see up next to my index.tsx, I've got a little source because it's in my source directory. And it will actually show the full path in my case because I've got it set to medium. That's super useful. Whew. Here's where we get onto the shortcuts. Opening and closing your terminal. Learn what the shortcut is for that, because you're going to be opening and closing it a lot if you're anything like me and just like to stay in VS Code. Those of you that are probably relatively new to programming, actually, those of you that are completely new to programming will think that you write code like you would write any text, where you just have one cursor. And those of you that are a little bit more comfortable with code will realize that you can have multiple cursors, and you'll start using this for everything. Where if I hold, in my case, Command, and I click on multiple lines, I can have multiple cursors. So I can start writing the same thing on multiple lines and spell it wrong. If you get a bit further on from that, you'll find out that there are shortcuts to do these sort of things as well. So if I hold Command and Alt and press up, I can automatically add cursors on the lines above or below if I'm pressing down. One thing that I use quite often is I select all of my lines. There is a shortcut, which in my case is Command-Shift-L, to put a cursor at the end of each line, which is super useful. Let me see, oh god, I don't know if I should go over all of these. So people often use these for stuff like, if I've got a bunch of references to, why are you, hang on. Get out of here. That's for later. So I've hidden it. If you've got a bunch of, say you've got a variable that is used in a bunch of places, let's just add one up here. Thing equals hello. Oh my god, my typing is going to be terrible, I apologize. And it's also used in my JSX down here, and maybe I've got a console log in here that logs thing, but in caps, sorry. And that's not even a valid place to put it. There we go. You will see people like, you can double click on a thing to select it, and then they'll hold Command so they can start multiple selecting things, or maybe they'll click somewhere in the middle, and then you can use Alt to skip to the start and end of words, or if you're on Windows, I think that's Control and arrow keys to skip to the start and end of words. And if you hold Shift while doing that, you can select the thing, and then you can start renaming stuff. So I can change thing to thing, nice. And I see people do that a lot, whether it's with the multi-cursor thing or with Command D, I think, which is pretty universal. You can just select the next instance of a thing that matches your selection. And those are all okay. Command D gets a bit weird because if I had, let's say, my variable here was called comp, and then I select it and press Command D, you'll notice that it's selected part of my component. That's not what I want. I don't want to accidentally rename that. And you can sort of overcome that with, if you're doing find and replace, Command F, you can find and replace a thing in this file, and Command Shift F, you can find and replace a thing in your whole project. I won't go into that too much. Get out of here. And with these tools, I can say, like, only select the words that exactly match this, so it won't be a partial match on another word, or I can say match the case, so I don't accidentally match things at different cases. Those are fine, but there's still a lot more effort than my favorite tool, which is rename symbol, where VSCode just knows what things are. You know that symbol explorer thing we had a look at a little while ago? It knows what things are references to other things. So you can even have two variables in the same file with the same name and rename just one of them, like inside a function. It's inside its own scope. So if I change this to thing again, ta-da, it's automatically updated everywhere, and I didn't have to go and select it or figure out how to Command F that thing without affecting other stuff. One awesome thing about that is, so I have, I probably should have actually put some constants in my constants file for us to play with. Okay, I've got an enum in here called animals. For those of you that don't know TypeScript, an enum's just kind of like an object with key value pairs in it, but it's unique-er. Don't worry about it. If I import that in here, let's call it animals, from constant, then let's not do anything more in here. But if I was to go in here and do my rename symbol, animals, you'll notice that it's also updated my import in here automatically. It will update any references across your whole project. It's freaking awesome. And if I Command Z that, well, it even undid the one in here, but I'll go save it again, apparently. So yeah, rename symbol, super useful. I should have said right at the start, sorry if a lot of you will probably know some of these things. I'm just like throwing out anything that I've seen people not know before that I think will be useful stuff. And I'm sure at the end of this, some of the more senior people will have some crazy stuff that I've never heard of before. Right, navigating around, skip over words. Oh, we did Alt, you can skip over a single word. Command, I can skip to the start of end of words. Or on Windows, I believe that is Control and up and down, which is a bit weird. Similarly, when you're doing any of these things, you can hold Shift to start selecting stuff. So I can Shift while I'm selecting up and down. I can hold Shift while I'm commanding to the side to select an entire line. If I wanted to duplicate a line, I've seen people do this in a lot of different ways. Those of you that love the mouse will go and highlight it, and then you'll copy it, and then you'll paste it, and then you go down a new line and start doing that. When you realize that if you have the cursor on the end of the line, or actually anywhere in the line, and you just press Command X or whatever, Control X to cut, that you can just cut the entire line and then paste to get it as many times as you want. And something that I never remember to do, but I really should, is the next shortcut, because I've forgotten it already. Where is it? Quickly duplicate a line. Alt, Shift, and up and down. So if I hold Alt and Shift and up and down, I can just duplicate the line in any direction I want as well, which is nice, instead of just pasting it below. Additional cursors below, we've done that thing. Rename symbol, done that. Go to bracket is super cool. Okay, we don't have a lot of brackets in this file, but occasionally you've got a file that's full of nested functions or JSON or something, and you need to know where the other bracket is. And if it's super nested, you can have a lot of brackets with the same colors, because we've only got 3 colors or something for the nesting. But yeah, if you just search for a bracket, you will find out what the shortcut for your go-to bracket thing is. And there's not like a go-to end bracket, because it just goes to the opposite of whichever bracket you're at. So if I do that, oh look, now I'm down at the other end of the component, or yeah, you get the idea. You can jump between brackets. Cool. There's some other things like go-to definition. A lot of these things are available in your context menu if you just right-click, by the way. So we've got go-to definition, go-to type definition. That's only relevant for you people that write TypeScript, where your types are somewhere else than your code is. If your thing is your type, then both of them will take you to the same place. Yeah, that's enough said about that. We've also got some cool stuff in here like go-to references and go-to implementations, where it's going to show us where these things are implemented. So we can jump around and see oh, our app here, it extends pure component, or no, might extend pure component, I guess, or component up in here. Well, there's also like peek at definitions, so we can peek at stuff instead of just going straight to it, which is quite good for not, going away from your code if you just want to see what something is real quick. If we go to the type definition of React component, and let's actually go into React. So we're now in our node modules viewing the React types. Another thing I like to use is that you can just go back with, in my case, option and minus, and you can also go forward. So I can press that and it takes me back to this file, or if I search for forward, which is option shift minus, I would have thought that would be option plus, but okay. Then I can go back to where I was. So you can use this to if you're clicking go to definition, go to definition, go to definition through a bunch of stuff, you can actually get back to where you were originally and then skip between them. Oh, and similarly, in addition to right-clicking and doing that thing yourself, you've got the option to just, in my case, alt-click to view what the definition of things is, and then click through to that. Final references, final implementations. Cool, quick fix, super useful. Let's add some code here, and I'm going to spoil the next part of the talk. Okay, I need what's something I can fix real quick? Something I see people do all the time is, say I've got a component. Oop. Oh no, this is going to take me too long to run out. What's something I can fix real quick? I should have prepared examples more at the start. I don't know, like an ESLint error of some kind. Do I have any ESLint rules on the let thing equal? There we go. Let's just use our thing here again. Now I've got an error here. It says things never assigned, use const instead. And I could go and fix that myself, or I could use the quick fix thing. And quick fix can fix a whole bunch of stuff, like imports missing, or you've just written some code that isn't great. And although I can I click on this and see, that's probably tiny for you. Oh no, that looks, can anyone read that? Sorry if these little context things are sort of unreadable. I'm working with a specific resolution. It says fix this prefer const problem at the top. And if I click on that, ta-da, it's automatically changed to const for me. But generally it will give you several different fixes that you can use for stuff. And again, basically everything, there is a keyboard shortcut for that. So if I were to have a look at, there we go. It says it's command dot. So if I press command dot, it opens up the menu. I guess if there were one thing to fix, it would just automatically fix it. But there we go. I'm going to stop changing the code in here because otherwise I'm going to be changing it back and forth the whole time, and at some point I'm actually going to need some changes. All right, I think that's enough about shortcuts because they're getting boring. We've done editor config. Prettier, super popular. This is, you can use the formatter that's built into your editor and stuff, but Prettier has become kind of the, you should all use this thing because it's opinionated. And although sometimes its opinions are horrible and I hate it so much, you should use it because it's it's the lesser of all the evils. Also, ESLint, obviously, hopefully a lot of you have heard of that. If you're new to programming, you might not have, but this is a tool for making sure your code is, it can do a couple of things. It can make sure your code looks nice, but these days we leave that to Prettier, because Prettier just makes sure code looks nice and doesn't let you have an opinion about it. But it also finds bugs in your code or things that can be improved, like that let being a const, etc. Code spell checker is something I see nobody use, and it really gets on my nerves because I'm a stickler for spelling. This is just, if I go and let's mess up my spelling of definition. Look, I've got a warning in my editor. It's just like using Microsoft Word. Super useful until you start using words that it doesn't know, and then it's a bit annoying. But fortunately, if you have a look in my settings, I've got a bunch of words that I think it should know about. There's a lot of them, and I keep adding to them, mailgun being the most recent. How is mailgun not a word? It's two words joined together. Anyway. Super useful for making sure you don't misspell stuff, especially since that's not just necessarily what your users are going to see. It's I've misspelled a variable. If you're not using types, then it's not going to tell you that you're referencing something that doesn't exist, etc. Unless you're using ESLint. All right, improvements, extensions for improving the speed that you code at. Auto close tag is super nice. I have this configured to work like Sublime Text 3, where when I do the final part of a tag, it automatically closes it for me. If I do a slash, it just adds the arrow at the end. And I would recommend using Sublime Text Mode 3 with auto close tag. In fact, VSCode might already do this out of the box, I think, because does it now? Damn it. Well, I still prefer this one. So. Okay, yeah, it didn't used to, so actually, yeah, another thing I should have mentioned at the start of the talk. Some of these extensions might be obsolete, but I still use them for some reason. The thing I was getting at about using the Sublime Text Mode 3 thing is that if you're writing TypeScript, you will be writing a lot of sort of generic types, like if you're providing props to a component, and that looks a lot like some HTML tags, and so if you don't use the Sublime Text Mode 3 thing, it will automatically try and complete, like, I don't know if I wrote props here, it would add a closed tag, which doesn't make any sense in TypeScript. Right, enough of that. Cool, what have we got next? Right, these are ones, again, that I don't see a lot of people use. Change case, sort lines, remove empty lines, file utils, which, there's this file utils extension that does a whole bunch of stuff, and all I use it for is to duplicate the file that I'm in at the moment, because I don't know, that's the easiest way to do it. Instead of having to open up, I've barely opened my file explorer at all so far. There is a duplicate option in here, but being able to do it without having that open just from whichever file you're in, instead of having to then also find it in the tree, is super nice. But let's have a look at sort lines and remove empty lines. So I've got some animals that my client has provided. How generous of him. A big dog, a little cat, tiny fish. And I want to create an enum for these. Now I'm going to use like some of the stuff that I've been over already. So selecting multiple lines. I can indent multiple lines at a time. Nice. Put a cursor on each. Let's quote these. So my enum looks like this. But in general, an enum should be constant case because the things aren't going to change and they're unique, which is where the change case thing comes in. And there's a whole bunch of different stuff that this does, not just like programming cases, but also title case, sentence case, that sort of thing. And we want constant case, which is that one. Ta-da! Now we've got those as, I don't know why I put these in quotes. They shouldn't be in quotes. Now we've got an enum with the stuff in it, but they're in the wrong order because I want them ordered. No, wait, they're in the. I was going to say alphabetically. They are unfortunately alphabetically BLT. Good sandwich, but so let's order them by something else. So that's something. If we were to sort lines by shuffle. There you go. I don't know why you'd ever need that, but we could also sort by line length, which they are now again sorted by accident. So. How about ascending? There we go. We're back to the point is it's useful. That along with the change case is super useful. Remove empty lines. Pretty is going to do for you most of the time, but if you've got like a whole bunch of code and you're not sure where your empty lines are, do I not have this anymore? Where's my remove empty lines in selection? There we go. Super useful. I mean, in that tiny example, not very useful. When you've got a lot of code, it does become useful. Camel case navigation is something I was just going to mention because I hate it. But, in JavaScript, all of our variables are camel case. Like here we got document.getElement by ID. So that's like 4 different words. So if I'm using alt or my arrow keys to skip from word to word, I can skip from the end to the end. If you install the camel case navigation extension, you can skip to each little bit because it sees where the capitals and the lowercase meet. But it's not easy to toggle between that and skipping to the start and end of word, which is why I don't use it. And I more often than not skipping to the very start and end. But yeah, might be something you like to use. Maybe I'll write an extension that does it better than the one that's out there, and then I will start using it. Who knows? Git blame / lens. I've got this called improve collaboration, and then the first thing I've got is git blame, which doesn't sound great, but it's a little plugin to. I might not actually be able to show you it because I'm too zoomed in. If I zoom out, no, it is that. It's all good. Sorry, it's down here. So this, no, it's not. There we go, blame. I was not on a line that had stuff. So I've got a little thing down here that just says who wrote that line and when they wrote it. And if I click on it, it will tell me what the name of the commit was. And if I click view, that's going to take me to GitHub or GitLab or wherever things are hosted. Git lens is a similar thing that a lot of people like to use. Git blame, it does more stuff than just what I've displayed with git blame, but all I need is quickly see who wrote that thing and get to the pull request. Live share. Has anyone used live share here? And I really hope you have, because yes, it's so useful, especially like if you are, if you're a junior who's just learning, or you're a senior who's mentoring a junior. Even if you're sat in the same office, it's quite useful to just be able to connect to their computer from directly opposite them instead of walking around the table. But no, mostly because you have all of your keyboard shortcuts, your beautiful theme that you have, etc. So you don't have to stare at their hideous bright colors or whatever. Yeah, and you can have as many people in a live share as you want. So I've been using it. I'm tutoring a few of my friends at the moment, and they're in various different places, and we'll all just hop into VS Code and all be coding in the same place at the same time. This probably isn't super relevant to everyone, but WSL, does anyone know what WSL is? Just yell if you know it.
Windows Subsystem for Linux.
Yes, Windows Subsystem. I don't even know why it's called that. The name doesn't really make sense. Windows Subsystem for Linux is a thing that allows you to run Linux in Windows, and it's not an emulator, but it basically is. And you have to enable emulation on your CPU, so it definitely is an emulator. Anyway, that means if you're working with people that are working on Unix systems like Linux and Mac, and you own a PC, Windows PC, you can actually run VS Code as if it's running in Linux, and then use all the same commands that they do, all the same libraries that they do with little effort. It used to be a bit of a pain to set up, but with WSL 2, it's basically just you search on the App Store for WSL, and then you install it, and now you're done. After enabling virtualization on your CPU if you haven't already in your BIOS, which is more complicated, but go and read the documentation. There we go. Markdown Preview, not something that I use super often, but we've got a Markdown file open here. Ta-da! Now I can see what it would look like when I put it on GitHub or whatever. I don't know how I'm going to close this because the Zoom thing's in the way. There we go. Just a nice little thing. Color highlight. VS Code has that now, I think, although I think it only does it in CSS files. So wherever you write a hex code or an RGB thing, it will colorize it. To do highlight, you can see is actually being utilized in this file where it probably shouldn't be. So I've got, I'm surprised, actually, does VS Code do that out of the box now? Like I say, a lot of these might be able to, does it highlight to-dos? Shit, sorry. To do tree is one thing that it doesn't do out of the box, which is that I've got this little extra thing on the side where I can see where all of my to-dos are and quickly navigate to them. And I can find out which directory am I spending the least time actually writing good code in. So I can go and sort that out, hopefully. When I had a touch bar on my previous Mac, I had a different way of doing this, but after losing my touch bar, because I don't like it personally, sorry if any of you love your touch bar, I wanted to have quick ways to insert all these things without typing out stuff or having to remember what the things are. And so I set up key chords. Key chords, for those of you that don't know, are like keyboard shortcuts, but you have to do 2 of them. So you generally have one that's initiates it listening for a second key chord, and then your second key chord is the thing that initializes that. So keyboard shortcuts are something that you can define yourself in VS Code. If I search for Snippet in here, you'll see that I've got a whole bunch of them set up for all of my snippets that I want to insert. So let's use, so all of these ones that begin with U are my use effect and stuff. So I've got to use ref, use state, use, let's see, context, there we go. There's a bunch of them, and these are things that you can define yourself. These are all, this editor.action.insert snippet, by the way, is not something that's really documented super well. You just kind of have to search the internet for how do I execute a command in VS Code? There's a bunch of I guess it's the name of the insert snippet action. I cannot remember how you actually define which snippet it is, but I think I wrote these in a. It's not in the snippets, but it's so I've got my VS Code settings in here, key bindings, right? So right, there you go. You can define some arguments to it. This is the JSON view of that keyboard shortcuts. So you can define them yourself, pass different arguments in. Right. Anyway, yeah, keyboard shortcuts, cool. Let's do an example of those. So I've got use state. I just press Command U and then S. Ta-da! Well, if I want to use effect, Command U E. I'm just pressing 2 or 3 keys at a time instead of having to type out the whole stuff. And what I was going to say in regards to having a touch bar, actually, I would recommend this app, even if you're on a Mac, regardless of whether you have a touch bar or not, please get Better Touch Tool, which is a paid-for thing, but this is it's so powerful in so many ways. It can do keyboard shortcuts, gestures, all kind of stuff. Window snapping, I've got a bunch of shortcuts set up to change where I want my window that I just do from the keyboard, but it also has the ability to drag and snap, like you would on I've lost it, on Windows. Does Mac even have that out of the box anymore? Do we have window snapping in Mac? It's got you can align windows next to each other, but that's not really what I want. Anyway, as part of this, it also allows you to completely override what you have in your touch bar, and you can even do that contextually. So you'll see on the side here, I've got this little Visual Studio Code thing. If I have a look at what touch bar stuff I've got in there, So this is things that will show on my touch bar when VSCode is in focus. And this has, well, first of all my things work within a group called Snippets, just in case I wanted to add more stuff. But that would display like a bunch of buttons along the top of my touch bar, like interface, iReact DOM. Sorry if that's really small and hard for you guys to read, but they're basically just the names of my snippets. So I just press a single touch bar button instead of multiple keycords like I spend ages pressing these days. There we go. Ooh, can I cover anything more about snippets now? I think everyone just wants to see Copilot, right? Let's do some cool stuff with Copilot. So I've got a whole bunch of random files that I've opened somehow. Copilot wrote the original file that I had in here. Let's get on to what I was talking about. Import React as default, let's say, because otherwise it'll do like a, what do you call it? Namespace import. Oh, I've got it turned off. The one time I wanted it to automatically turn itself on. Right, come on, give me a suggestion. There we go, right, it just did that for me. Let's say, oh wait, it already knows I want to import React on. Well, that's cool. Oh wait, what was that app? I don't have an app component at the moment. Instead, I want to define my app in here. Yeah, it'll be a function component. It's going to be in it. Sure, okay, that's cool. How about export, we want to export default. Yeah, default. What do you guys, oh, I knew, see? How cool is that? And so you can do it kind of like in a mixture of writing comments above stuff to refactor things and just writing stuff out, and it will come up with suggestions as it goes. And like I say, everyone said, oh, it's Stack Overflow in your editor, but it's not, because I was writing some code earlier today that no one has written before in their lives, probably. Well, I don't know. Just because it had stupid variable names in it that no one should be using, and it like, Copilot is like, we're reading the code in your project and trying to suggest things based on your coding style and variable names that you use. So, for example, I was destructuring some things, I'm going to keep using things, sorry, from the process.env in Node, but imagine you're getting some stuff from the window object, and you want to say like, if not things, because I definitely want that thing to exist, that I would throw a specific error that said that things don't. Oh wait, did it actually suggest it? Yeah, that'll do. Now that things don't exist, but then if I went and added some.
Can you go back to the nah, bro?
What did it say? I didn't.
It just said nah.
Nah, bro, you need to include the things library. There you go. Well, there we go. I'm going to stick with the example I was using. Nah things is not defined will do, and then if I were to take something else from there, so let's grab some things. If I do, oh, not thanks, look, see, look, it knew. It's literally just taken like the code that I wrote on the previous line, and if I were to, let's change this to banana, which there's no way anyone wrote this, right? Let's put another thing up here called something. Nice. I'm so inventive with variable names. If not something, something is not banana. Isn't this amazing? Like, so this is like, it's more than Stack Overflow. It can do a whole bunch of stuff for you. As I was like, when I find myself writing repetitive code, it started writing all the repetitive code for me, so I didn't have to worry about typing it out. Unfortunately, you have to pay for it. You get a 60-day free trial, which is what I'm on at the moment. But I probably will pay for it after this. It's only like $10 a month. It seems like a lot, but like if it's doing half of your job for you and you're getting paid more than that an hour, yeah, totally worth it. Sorry if I haven't really looked up at all this time to see if anyone had their hands up. I've sort of been glancing up. Don't know if anyone, did anyone have any questions along the way? No? Cool. Well, all right, well, I'll move on to whatever I was going to do next. Oh yeah, we did do the... I don't know why I moved these down. They should be above the mind-blowing stuff. All right, so does anyone know what a dot files repo is? Or I guess raise your hand if you... No, I don't want to call people out. A dot files repo is a repo where you keep all of your dot files, your files that begin with dots, like your dot editor config, your dot ESLint.rc, stuff that you're going to use commonly. But I've extended mine a bit further than that. So, well, like mine includes my VSCode key bindings and snippets and all that sort of stuff. So whenever I get a new computer or I start working at a new place and they give me a computer, the first thing I do is check out my .files repo, and I've got a couple of scripts in there that just go and set up like my entire computer for me with all the settings that I'm used to. And this is kind of something you're going to have to write yourselves. But, I've just as an example, also I can't open source this because it's my stuff. Otherwise, yeah, there's like sensitive things in there. But, I've got a nice README that tells me how to do things. So first of all, clean this repo. I always put it in a specific place. Then I run setup. That creates a .env file where I can put my sensitive things. Then I run an install script, which is just a bash script that asks me, do you want to install Node? Do you want to install this and that? And I press Y or N as I go, and then it goes and does them all for me. And then I run the link script, which is the thing that goes and takes. So I've got my bash profile in here, editor config profile, etc. These all stay in the directory where I cloned this repo at my home/code/JakeSmith, but they get linked to my home directory as symlinked, so they still get picked up by stuff. Which means that I can just at any point go and edit my dot files in my dot files repo, and it's still immediately applied, and I can just push that up to GitHub. As soon as I get any computer, it's already all set up.
How does Git handle that symlinking? So you're symlinking from a repository into another directory?
No, you're symlinking from your home directory into a repository. So I've got, instead of having a .bash profile in my home directory, I have a symlink to my .bash profile.
And your editor config is in your home directory, not in each Git?
No, my editor config, well, in this case, so I've got a global editor config. So editor config looks up the tree of directories you're in, and it finds the first one that it does. So I've got one in my home directory, which is just for if you didn't find one, please use these settings. Cool. GitHub Desktop is a thing I'm a fan of, and everyone criticizes me for. Well, not everyone, some people do. If real programmers just use the terminal, and don't touch their mouse and all that sort of stuff. GitHub Desktop is an incredibly powerful, useful tool for doing the basic stuff that you do in Git all the time, like viewing your diff. And yes, I know VSCode has a diff thing and all that stuff, but it doesn't look as nice, and it's this tiny little sidebar, and the diff thing's all weird. This is just personally the way I prefer to work, and it makes it super easy to be I don't want the big dog line, and write my commit messages and things. Yay! Oh my god, I've got to start coming up with more useful stuff. And from here, I can undo my temporary commits. I can go in here, right-click, revert changes. All the kind of common stuff. I would still use the terminal for doing anything more complex, like cherry picking, or I would never use this for merging. Don't merge with it. It does some weird things. I've seen it destroy an entire repo history because it uses rebase under the hood and it did something wrong. Yeah, so don't use it for merging, but for other stuff that's nice and simple, do that. There's also alternatives to this, I've noted on here, Tower is another popular one, and I'm sure there's a bunch of others. Does anyone in here use a Git UI? Git Graph, yeah. Source tree, yeah. So there's a bunch of them out there. Are the Git Graph or Source tree open source or free or?
Yeah, free, just an extension.
Yeah, right. So there are alternatives. Gitify is something I use just because I really hate emails, and I also really hate notifications. I don't know how better to put that. Gitify is a little app that was written by one of my ex-colleagues that's like a little... There is... No, not one password. Shit. Get out of here. Don't want to show you guys that. Here we go. Sorry, it's partially... This is kind of awkward because Zoom is in the way. It is a little desktop app that just has my GitHub notification. So I get a little notification pop up there, and then this lists them grouped by repository and all that stuff, and I can mark them as read from here or click through to them, and you can have it linked to multiple different accounts and enterprise accounts if you wanted. So it's just a lot quicker to be able to ignore people's pull requests, that sort of thing. And then I've got a better touch tool right at the bottom, which I've already covered. So I think that's pretty much all I've got for you guys.